Israel is a country in southern Levant region of West Asia. Bordered by Lebanon and Syria to the north, West Bank and Jordan to the east, Gaza Strip and Egypt to the southwest and Mediterranean Sea to the west. The country has a small coastline on the Red Sea at its southernmost point, and part of Dead Sea lies along its eastern border. Israel's proclaimed capital is in Jerusalem, while Tel Aviv is the country's largest urban area and economic center. Israel is located in a region known to Jews as Land of Israel, synonymous with Palestine region, Holy Land, and Canaan. In antiquity, it was home to Canaanite civilization followed by the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. Situated at a continental crossroad, the region experienced demographic changes under the rule of various empires from Romans to Ottomans. European anti-Semitism in late 19th century galvanized Zionism, which sought a Jewish homeland in Palestine and gained British support. After World War I, Britain occupied the region and established mandatory Palestine in 1920. Increased Jewish immigration in the lead-up to the Holocaust and British colonial policy led to intercommunal conflict between Jews and Arabs, which escalated into a civil war in 1947 after United Nations proposed partitioning the land between them. State of Israel declared its establishment on the 14th of May, 1948. The armies of neighboring Arab states invaded the area of the former mandate the next day, beginning the First Arab-Israeli War. Subsequent armistice agreements established Israeli control over 77% of the former mandate territory. The majority of Palestinian Arabs were either expelled or fled in what is known as Nakba, with those remaining becoming the new state's main minority. Over the following decades, Israel's population increased greatly as the country received an influx of Jews who emigrated, fled, or expelled from the Muslim world. Following 1967's Six-Day War, Israel occupied the West Bank, Gaza Strip, Egyptian Sinai Peninsula, and Syrian Golan Heights. Israel established and continues to expand settlements and has effectively annexed East Jerusalem and the Golan Heights. After 1973 Yom Kippur War, Israel signed peace treaties with Egypt, returning Sinai in 1982 and Jordan. In the 2020s, it normalized relations with more Arab countries. However, efforts to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict after the interim Oslo Accords have not succeeded, and the country has engaged in several wars and clashes with Palestinian militant groups. The country's basic laws establish a unicameral parliament elected by proportional representation, the Knesset, which determines the makeup of the government headed by the Prime Minister and elects the figurehead president. Israel is the only country to have a revived official language, Hebrew. Its culture comprises Jewish and Jewish diaspora elements alongside Arab influences. Israel has one of the largest economies in the Middle East and among the highest GDP per capita and standards of living in Asia. One of the most technologically advanced and developed countries in the world, it spends proportionally more on research and development than any other. Early hominin presence in the Levant, where Israel is located, dates back 1.5 million years based on the Ubaidiya prehistoric site. The School and Kafse hominins dating back 120,000 years are some of the earliest traces of anatomically modern humans outside of Africa. The Negevian culture, which linked to Proto-Afro-Asiatic language, emerged by the 10th millennium BCE, followed by the Gasulian culture by around 4500 BCE. Early references to Canaanites and Canaan appear in Near Eastern and Egyptian texts. These populations structured as politically independent city-states. During Late Bronze Age, large parts of Canaan formed vassal states of the New Kingdom of Egypt. As a result of the Late Bronze Age collapse, Canaan fell into chaos and Egyptian control over the region collapsed. A people named Israel appear for the first time in the Merneptah Stele, an ancient Egyptian inscription which dates to about 1200 BCE. Ancestors of the Israelites are thought to include ancient Semitic-speaking peoples native to this area. Modern archaeological suggest that the Israelites and their culture branched out of the Canaanite peoples through the development of a distinct monolatristic and later monotheistic religion centered on Yahweh. They spoke an archaic form of Hebrew, known as Biblical Hebrew. Around the same time, the Philistines settled on the southern coastal plain. Most modern scholars agree that the Exodus narrative in the Torah and Old Testament did not take place as depicted. However, some elements of these traditions do have historical roots. There is debate about the earliest existence of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah and their extent and power. While it is unclear if there was a united kingdom of Israel, historians and archaeologists agree that the northern kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah existed. The kingdom of Israel was the more prosperous of the two and soon developed into a regional power with a capital at Samaria during the Omride dynasty. It controlled Samaria, Galilee, the upper Jordan Valley, the plain of Sharon and large parts of Transjordan. The kingdom of Israel was conquered around 720 BCE by the Neo-Assyrian Empire. The kingdom of Judah under Davidic rule with its capital in Jerusalem later became a client state of first the Neo-Assyrian Empire and then the Neo-Babylonian Empire. It is estimated that the region's population was around 400,000 in the Iron Age too. In 587 BCE, following a revolt in Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar II besieged and destroyed Jerusalem and Solomon's temple, dissolved the kingdom and exiled much of the Judean elite to Babylon. After capturing Babylon in 539 BCE, Cyrus the Great, founder of Achaemenid Empire, issued a proclamation allowing the exiled Judean population to return to Judah. Construction of Second Temple was completed 520 BCE. Achaemenids ruled the region as province of Ud-Medinata. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great conquered the region as part of his campaign against Achaemenid Empire. After his death, the area was controlled by Ptolemaic and Seleucid empires as part of Coele Syria. Over the ensuing centuries, the Hellenization of the region led to cultural tensions that came to a head during the reign of Antiochus IV, giving rise to the Maccabean Revolt of 167 BCE. The civil unrest weakened Seleucid rule, and in late 2nd century the semi-autonomous Hasmonean Kingdom of Judea arose, eventually attaining full independence and expanding into neighboring regions. Roman Republic invaded the region in 63 BCE, taking control of Syria and then intervening in the Hasmonean Civil War. The struggle between pro-Roman and pro-Parthian factions in Judea led to the installation of Herod the Great as a dynastic vassal of Rome. In 6 CE, the area annexed as the Roman province of Judea. Tensions with Roman rule led to a series of Jewish-Roman wars, resulting in widespread destruction. The First Jewish-Roman War resulted in the destruction of Jerusalem and the Second Temple and a sizable portion of the population being killed or displaced. Second uprising, known as Bar Kokhba Revolt, initially allowed Jews to form an independent state, but Romans brutally crushed the rebellion, devastating and depopulating Judea's countryside. Jerusalem was rebuilt as Roman colony and Judea province renamed Syria Palestina. Jews expelled from the districts surrounding Jerusalem. Nevertheless, a small Jewish presence in Galilee became its religious center. Early Christianity displaced Roman paganism in 4th century CE, with Constantine embracing and promoting Christian religion and Theodosius I making it the state religion. A series of laws were passed that discriminated against Jews and Judaism. Jews were persecuted by both the church and the authorities. Many Jews emigrated to flourishing diaspora communities, while locally there was both Christian immigration and local conversion. By the middle of 5th century, there was a Christian majority. Towards the end of 5th century, Samaritan revolts erupted, continuing until late 6th century and resulting in a large decrease in the Samaritan population. After the Sasanian conquest of Jerusalem and the short-lived Jewish revolt against Heraclius in 614 CE, the Byzantine Empire reconsolidated control of the area in 628. In 634 to 641 CE, Rashidun Caliphate conquered the Levant. Over the next 6 centuries, control of the region transferred between Umayyad, Abbasid, Fatimid caliphates and subsequently the Seljuk and Ayyubid dynasties. The population drastically decreased during the following several centuries, dropping from 1 million during Roman and Byzantine periods to about 300,000 by early Ottoman period, and there was a steady process of Arabization and Islamization. End of 11th century brought the Crusades, papally sanctioned incursions of Christian crusaders intent on wresting Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim control and establishing crusader states. The Ayyubids pushed back the Crusaders before Muslim rule was fully restored by the Mamluk Sultans of Egypt in 1291. In 1516, Ottoman Empire conquered the region and ruled it as part of Ottoman Syria. 2 violent incidents took place against Jews, the 1517 Safed attacks and the 1517 Hebron attacks, after the Turkish Ottomans ousted the Mamluks during the Ottoman-Mamluk War. Under the Ottoman Empire, the Levant was fairly cosmopolitan with religious freedoms for Christians, Muslims, and Jews. In 1561, the Ottoman Sultan invited Sephardi Jews escaping the Spanish Inquisition to settle in and rebuild the city of Tiberias. Under the Ottoman Empire's millet system, Christians and Jews were considered dhimmi, meaning protected, under Ottoman law in exchange for loyalty to the state and payment of the jizya tax. Non-Muslim Ottoman subjects faced geographic and lifestyle restrictions, though these were not always enforced. The millet system organized non-Muslims into autonomous communities on the basis of religion. The concept of the return remained a symbol within religious Jewish belief, which emphasized that their return should be determined by divine providence rather than human action. Leading Zionist historian Shlomo Avineri describes this connection. Jews did not relate to the vision of the return in a more active way than most Christians viewed the second coming. The religious Judaic notion of being a nation was distinct from the modern European notion of nationalism. The Jewish population of Palestine from the Ottoman rule to the beginning of the Zionist movement, known as the Old Yishuv, comprised a minority and fluctuated in size. During 16th century, Jewish communities struck roots in the four holy cities, Jerusalem, Tiberias, Hebron, and Safed. In 1697, Rabbi Yehuda Hakkasid led a group of 1,500 Jews to Jerusalem. A 1660 Druze revolt against the Ottomans destroyed Safed and Tiberias. In the second half of 18th century, Eastern European Jews who were opponents of Hasidism, known as the Perishim, settled in Palestine. In late 18th century, local Arab Sheikh Zahir al-Umar created a de facto independent emirate in the Galilee. Ottoman attempts to subdue the sheikh failed. After Zahir's death, Ottomans regained control of the area. In 1799, Governor Jazza Pasha repelled an assault on Acre by Napoleon's troops, prompting the French to abandon the Syrian campaign. In 1834, a revolt by Palestinian Arab peasants against Egyptian conscription and taxation policies under Muhammad Ali was suppressed. Muhammad Ali's army retreated and Ottoman rule was restored with British support in 1840. The Tanzimat reforms were implemented across the Ottoman Empire. The first wave of modern Jewish migration to Ottoman-ruled Palestine, known as First Aliyah, began in 1881 as Jews fled pogroms in Eastern Europe. The 1882 May laws increased economic discrimination against Jews and restricted where they could live. In response, political Zionism took form, a movement that sought to establish a Jewish state in Palestine, thus offering a solution to the Jewish question of the European states. Anti-Semitism, pogroms, and official policies in Tsarist Russia led to the emigration of 3 million Jews between 1882 and 1914, only 1% of which went to Palestine. Those who went to Palestine were driven by ideas of self-determination and Jewish identity, rather than as a response to pogroms or economic insecurity. The Second Aliyah, 1904 to 1914, began after the Kishinev pogrom. 40,000 Jews settled in Palestine, although nearly half left eventually. Both the first and second waves of migrants were mainly Orthodox Jews. The Second Aliyah included Zionist socialist groups who established the kibbutz movement based on the idea of establishing a separate Jewish economy based exclusively on Jewish labor. Those of the Second Aliyah who became leaders of the Yishuv in the coming decades believed that the Jewish settler economy should not depend on Arab labor. This would be a dominant source of antagonism with the Arab population, with the new Yishuv's nationalist ideology overpowering its socialist one. Though the immigrants of the Second Aliyah sought to create communal Jewish agricultural settlements, Tel Aviv was established as the first planned Jewish town in 1909. Jewish armed militias emerged during this period, the first being Bar Jorah in 1907. 2 years later, the larger Hashomer organization was founded as its replacement. During the 1950s, Israel was frequently attacked by Palestinian Fedayeen, nearly always against civilians, mainly from the Egyptian-occupied Gaza Strip, leading to several Israeli reprisal operations. In 1956, UK and France aimed at regaining control of the Suez Canal, which Egypt had nationalized. The continued blockade of the Suez Canal and Straits of Tiran to Israeli shipping, together with increasing Fedayeen attacks against Israel's southern population and recent Arab threatening statements, prompted Israel to attack Egypt. Israel joined alliance with UK and France and overran the Sinai Peninsula in the Suez Crisis, but was pressured to withdraw by the UN in return for guarantees of Israeli shipping rights. The war resulted in significant reduction of Israeli border infiltration. In early 1960s, Israel captured Nazi war criminal Adolf Eichmann in Argentina and brought him to Israel for trial. Eichmann remains the only person executed in Israel by conviction in an Israeli civilian court. Since 1964, Arab countries, concerned over Israeli plans to divert waters of Jordan River into coastal plain, had been trying to divert the headwaters to deprive Israel of water resources, thus provoking tensions between Israel on the one hand and Syria and Lebanon on the other. Arab nationalists led by Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser refused to recognize Israel and called for its destruction. By 1966, Israeli-Arab relations deteriorated to the point of battles taking place between Israeli and Arab forces. In May 1967, Egypt massed its army near the border with Israel, expelled UN peacekeepers stationed in the Sinai Peninsula since 1957 and blocked Israel's access to the Red Sea. Other Arab states mobilized their forces. Israel reiterated that these actions were a casus belli and launched a preemptive strike, Operation Focus, against Egypt in June. Jordan, Syria, and Iraq attacked Israel. In the Six-Day War, Israel captured and occupied the West Bank from Jordan, Gaza Strip and Sinai Peninsula from Egypt and Golan Heights from Syria. Jerusalem's boundaries were enlarged, incorporating East Jerusalem. The 1949 Green Line became the administrative boundary between Israel and the occupied territories. Following the 1967 war and the Three Numbers resolution of the Arab League, Israel faced attacks from the Egyptians in the Sinai Peninsula during the 1967-1970 War of Attrition and from Palestinian groups targeting Israelis in the occupied territories, globally, and in Israel. Most important among the Palestinian and Arab groups was the Palestine Liberation Organization established in 1964, which initially committed itself to armed struggle as the only way to liberate the homeland. In late 1960s and early 1970s, Palestinian groups launched attacks against Israeli and Jewish targets around the world, including massacre of Israeli athletes at the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich. The Israeli government responded with assassination campaign against the organizers of the massacre, bombing and raid on PLO headquarters in Lebanon. On the 6th of October, 1973, Egyptian and Syrian armies launched a surprise attack against Israeli forces in Sinai Peninsula and Golan Heights, opening the Yom Kippur War. The war ended on the 25th of October with Israel repelling Egyptian and Syrian forces, but suffering great losses. In July 1976, an airliner was hijacked in flight from Israel to France by Palestinian guerrillas. Israeli commandos rescued 102 of 106 Israeli hostages. The 1977 Knesset elections marked a major turning point in Israeli political history as Menachem Begin's Likud party took control from the Labour Party. Later that year, Egyptian President Anwar el-Sadat made a trip to Israel and spoke before the Knesset in what was the first recognition of Israel by an Arab head of state. Sadat and Begin signed the Camp David Accords, 1978, and the Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty, 1979. In return, Israel withdrew from Sinai Peninsula. On the 11th of March, 1978, a PLO guerrilla raid from Lebanon led to the Coastal Road Massacre. Israel responded by launching an invasion of southern Lebanon to destroy PLO bases. Most PLO fighters withdrew, but Israel was able to secure southern Lebanon until UN force and Lebanese army take over. The PLO soon resumed its insurgency against Israel, and Israel carried out numerous retaliatory attacks. Several waves of Ethiopian Jews immigrated to Israel since the 1980s. Between 1990 and 1994, immigration from the post-Soviet states increased Israel's population by 12%. In 1985, Israel responded to a Palestinian terrorist attack in Cyprus by bombing the PLO headquarters in Tunisia. Israel withdrew from most of Lebanon in 1986 but maintained a borderland buffer zone in southern Lebanon until 2000, from where Israeli forces engaged in conflict with Hezbollah. The First Intifada, a Palestinian uprising against Israeli rule, broke out in 1987, with waves of uncoordinated demonstrations and violence in the occupied West Bank and Gaza. Over the following 6 years, the Intifada became more organized and included economic and cultural measures aimed at disrupting the Israeli occupation. Over 1,000 people were killed. During the 1991 Gulf War, the PLO supported Saddam Hussein and Iraqi missile attacks against Israel. Despite public outrage, Israel heeded American calls to refrain from hitting back. In 1992, Yitzhak Rabin became prime minister following an election in which his party called for compromise with Israel's neighbors. The following year, Shimon Peres on behalf of Israel and Mahmoud Abbas for the PLO signed the Oslo Accords, which gave Palestinian National Authority the right to govern parts of West Bank and Gaza Strip. The PLO also recognized Israel's right to exist and pledged an end to terrorism. In 1994, the Israel or Jordan Peace Treaty was signed, making Jordan the second Arab country to normalize relations with Israel. Israeli public support for the accords waned after Palestinian suicide attacks. In late 2000, the Second Intifada began after Sharon's controversial visit to the Temple Mount. Palestinian suicide bombings were a recurrent feature. Some commentators contend that Arafat pre-planned the Intifada after the collapse of peace talks. Sharon became prime minister in 2001 election. He carried out his plan to unilaterally withdraw from the Gaza Strip and spearheaded the construction of the West Bank barrier, ending the Intifada. Between 2000 and 2008, 1,063 Israelis, 5,517 Palestinians, and 64 foreign citizens were killed. In 2006, Hezbollah artillery assault on Israel's northern border communities and a cross-border abduction of 2 Israeli soldiers precipitated the month-long Second Lebanon War. In 2007, Israeli Air Force destroyed a nuclear reactor in Syria. In 2008, a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel collapsed, resulting in the 3-week Gaza war. In what Israel described as a response to over 100 Palestinian rocket attacks on southern Israeli cities, Israel began an operation in Gaza Strip in 2012, lasting 8 days. Israel started another operation in Gaza following an escalation of rocket attacks by Hamas in July 2014. In May 2021, another round of fighting took place in Gaza and Israel, lasting 11 days. By the 2010s, increasing regional cooperation between Israel and Arab League countries have been established, culminating in the signing of the Abraham Accords. The Israeli security situation shifted from the traditional Arab-Israeli conflict towards the Iran-Israel proxy conflict and direct confrontation with Iran during the Syrian civil war. On the 7th of October 2023, Palestinian militant groups from Gaza led by Hamas launched a series of coordinated attacks on Israel, leading to the start of the Israel-Hamas war. On that day, approximately 1,300 Israelis, predominantly civilians, were killed in communities near Gaza Strip border during music festival. Over 200 hostages were kidnapped and taken to the Gaza Strip. After clearing militants from its territory, Israel launched one of the most destructive bombing campaigns in modern history and invaded Gaza on the 27th of October with the stated objectives of destroying Hamas and freeing hostages. The fifth war of the Gaza-Israel conflict since 2008, it has been the deadliest for Palestinians in the entire Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the most significant military engagement in the region since the Yom Kippur War in 1973. Israel is located in the Levant area of the Fertile Crescent. It lies between latitudes 29 degrees and 34 degrees north and longitudes 34 degrees and 36 degrees east. The sovereign territory of Israel is approximately 20,770 square kilometers, of which 2% is water. However, Israel is so narrow, 100 kilometers at its widest, compared to 400 kilometers from north to south, that the exclusive economic zone in the Mediterranean is double the land area of the country. The total area under Israeli law, including East Jerusalem and the Golan Heights, is 22,072 square kilometers, and the total area under Israeli control, including the military-controlled and partially Palestinian-governed territory of the West Bank, is 27,799 square kilometers. Despite its small size, Israel is home to a variety of geographic features from Negev Desert in the south to inland fertile Jezreel Valley with mountain ranges of the Galilee, Carmel and toward the Golan in the north. The Israeli coastal plain on the shores of Mediterranean is home to most of the population. East of the Central Highlands lies Jordan Rift Valley, a small part of the 6,500 kilometers Great Rift Valley. Jordan River runs along Jordan Rift Valley from Mount Hermon through Hula Valley and Sea of Galilee to Dead Sea, the lowest point on the surface of the earth. Further south is the Arabah, ending with the Gulf of Eilat, part of the Red Sea. Maktesh, or erosion cirques, are unique to the Negev and the Sinai Peninsula, the largest being the Maktesh Ramon at 38 kilometers in length. Israel has the largest number of plant species per square meter of the countries in the Mediterranean basin and contains for terrestrial ecoregions, Eastern Mediterranean conifer, sclerophyllous, broadleaf forests, Southern Anatolian montane conifer and deciduous forests, Arabian desert, and Mesopotamian shrub desert. Forests accounted for 8.5% of the area in 2016, up from 2% in 1948, as the result of a large-scale forest planting program by the Jewish National Fund. Temperatures vary widely, especially during winter. Coastal areas such as Tel Aviv and Haifa have typical Mediterranean climate with cool, rainy winters and long, hot summers. Area of Beersheba and northern Negev have semi-arid climate with hot summers, cool winters and fewer rainy days. Southern Negev and Arabah areas have desert climate with very hot, dry summers and mild winters with few days of rain. Highest temperature 54 degrees Celsius recorded in 1942 in Tyrat Zvi Kibbutz. Mountainous regions can be windy and cold, and areas at elevation of 750 meters or more, same elevation as Jerusalem, usually receive at least one snowfall each year. Rain is rare from May to September. For different phytogeographic regions due to its location between temperate and tropical zones. For this reason, flora and fauna are extremely diverse. 2,867 known species of plants in Israel. At least 253 species are introduced and non-native. There are 380 Israeli nature reserves. With scarce water resources, Israel has developed various water-saving technologies, including drip irrigation. The considerable sunlight available for solar energy makes Israel the leading nation in solar energy use per capita. Practically every house uses solar panels for water heating. Israel has 19,224 kilometers of paved roads and 3 million motor vehicles. The number of motor vehicles per 1,000 persons is 365, relatively low among developed countries. The country aims to have 30% of vehicles on its roads powered by electricity by 2030. Israel has 5,715 buses on scheduled routes, operated by several carriers, the largest and oldest of which is Egged, serving most of the country. Railways stretch across 1,277 kilometers and operated by government-owned Israel Railways. Following major investments beginning in the early to mid-1990s, the number of train passengers per year has grown from 2.5 million in 1990 to 53 million in 2015. Railways transport 7.5 million tons of cargo per year. Israel is served by 3 international airports: Ben Gurion Airport, the country's main hub for international air travel, Ramon Airport, and Haifa Airport. Ben Gurion handled over 21.1 million passengers in 2023. There are 3 main ports: the Port of Haifa, the oldest and largest, Ashdod Port, and the Port of Eilat on the Red Sea. Tourism, especially religious tourism, is an important industry, with beaches, archaeological, other historical and biblical sites, and unique geography also drawing tourists. Israel has the largest Jewish population in the world and is the only country where Jews are the majority. As of the 31st of May 2024, the population was estimated 9,907,100. In 2022, the government recorded 73.6% of the population as Jews, 21.1% as Arabs, and 5.3% as others, non-Arab Christians, and people who have no religion listed. Over the last decade, large numbers of migrant workers from Romania, Thailand, China, Africa, and South America have settled in Israel. Exact figures are unknown, as many of them are living in the country illegally, but estimates run from 166,000 to 203,000. By June 2012, approximately 60,000 African migrants had entered Israel. About 93% of Israelis live in urban areas. 90% of Palestinian Israelis reside in 139 densely populated towns and villages concentrated in the Galilee, Triangle and Negev regions, with the remaining 10% in mixed cities and neighborhoods. Retention of Israel's population since 1948 is about even or greater when compared to other countries with mass immigration. Jewish emigration from Israel, called Yerida, primarily to the United States and Canada, is described by demographers as modest. Approximately 80% of Israeli Jews are born in Israel, 14% are immigrants from Europe and the Americas, and 6% are immigrants from Asia and Africa. Jews from Europe and the former Soviet Union and their descendants born in Israel, including Ashkenazi Jews, constitute approximately 44% of Jewish Israelis. Jews from Arab and Muslim countries and their descendants, including both Mizrahi and Sephardi Jews, form most of the rest of the Jewish population. Jewish intermarriage rates run at over 35%, and recent studies suggest that the percentage of Israelis descended from both Sephardi and Ashkenazi Jews increases by 0.5% yearly, with over 25% of school children now originating from both. Around 4% of Israelis, 300,000, ethnically defined as others, are Russian descendants of Jewish origin or family who are not Jewish according to rabbinical law, but were eligible for citizenship under the law of return. Israel has four major metropolitan areas: Gush Dan, Tel Aviv metropolitan area, population 3,854,000, Jerusalem, population 1,253,900, Haifa, 924,400, and Beersheba, 377,100. The largest municipality, in population and area, is Jerusalem, with 981,711 residents in an area of 125 square kilometers. Tel Aviv and Haifa rank as Israel's next most populous cities with populations of 474,530 and 290,306, respectively. The mainly Haredi city of Bnei Brak is the most densely populated city in Israel and one of the 10 most densely populated cities in the world. The estimated religious affiliation as of 2022 was 73.5% Jewish, 18.1% Muslim, 1.9% Christian, 1.6% Druze, and 4.9% other. The religious affiliation of Israeli Jews varies widely. A 2016 survey by Pew Research indicates that 49% self-identify as Hiloni, secular, 29% as Masorti, traditional, 13% as Dati, religious, and 9% as Haredi, ultra-Orthodox. Haredi Jews are expected to represent over 20% of the Jewish population by 2028. Muslims constitute the largest religious minority, making up about 18.1% of the population. About 1.9% of the population is Christian, and 1.6% is Druze. The Christian population comprises primarily Arab Christians and Aramean Christians, but also includes post-Soviet immigrants, foreign laborers, and followers of Messianic Judaism, considered by most Christians and Jews to be a form of Christianity. Members of many other religious groups, including Buddhists and Hindus, maintain a presence in Israel, albeit in small numbers. Israel comprises a major part of the Holy Land, a region of significant importance to all Abrahamic religions. Jerusalem is of special importance to Jews, Muslims, and Christians, as it is the home of sites that are pivotal to their religious beliefs, such as the Old City that incorporates Western Wall and Temple Mount, Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, and Church of Holy Sepulchre. Other locations of religious importance are Nazareth, site of Annunciation of Mary, Tiberias, and Safed, two of the four holy cities in Judaism, White Mosque in Ramla, Shrine of Prophet Saleh, and Church of St. George and Mosque of Al-Qada, Lod, Tomb of St. George or Al-Qida. A number of other religious landmarks located in the West Bank including Joseph's Tomb, the birthplace of Jesus, Rachel's Tomb, and Cave of the Patriarchs. The administrative center of the Baha'i faith and the Shrine of the Bab are located at the Baha'i World Center in Haifa. The leader of the faith is buried in Acre. The Mahmoud Mosque is affiliated with the reformist Ahmadiyya movement. Kababir, Haifa's mixed neighborhood of Jews and Ahmadi Arabs, is one of a few of its kind in the country. Cultural diversity stems from its diverse population. Jews from various diaspora communities brought their cultural and religious traditions with them. Arab influence is present in cultural spheres, being found in architecture, music, and cuisine. Israel is the only country where life revolves around Hebrew calendar. Holidays determined by Jewish holidays. Official rest day is Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath. Israeli music includes Mizrahi and Sephardic music, Hasidic melodies, Greek music, jazz, and pop rock. The Israel Philharmonic Orchestra has been in operation for over 70 years and performs more than 200 concerts each year. Itzhak Perlman, Pinchas Zuckerman, and Ofra Haza are among the internationally acclaimed musicians born in Israel. Israel participated in the Eurovision Song Contest nearly every year since 1973, winning the competition 4 times and hosting it twice. Eilat hosted its own international music festival, the Red Sea Jazz Festival, every summer since 1987. The nation's canonical folk songs are known as Songs of the Land of Israel. Israeli Jewish art has been influenced by the Kabbalah, the Talmud, and the Zohar. Another art movement that held a prominent role in the 20th century was the School of Paris. In the late 19th and early 20th century, the Yishuv's art was dominated by art trends emanating Bazal. Beginning in the 1920s, the local art scene was heavily influenced by modern French art, first introduced by Isaac Frenkel. Jewish masters of the School of Paris such as Soutine, Kikoin, Frenkel, Chagall heavily influenced the subsequent development of Israeli art. Israeli sculpture took inspiration from modern European sculpture as well Mesopotamian, Assyrian, and local art. Avrom Melnikov's Roaring Lion, David Polis, Alexander Zaid, and Zev Ben Zvi's Cubist sculpture exemplify some of the different streams in sculpture. Common themes in art are the mystical cities of Safed and Jerusalem, the Bohemian cafe culture of Tel Aviv, agricultural landscapes, biblical stories, and war. Today, Israeli art has delved into optical art, AI art, digital art, and the use of salt in sculpture. Due to immigration of Jewish architects, architecture has come to reflect different styles. In the early 20th century, Jewish architects sought to combine Occidental and Oriental architecture, producing buildings that showcase a myriad of infused styles. The eclectic style gave way to the modernist Bauhaus style with the influx of German Jewish architects, among them Erich Mendelsohn, fleeing Nazi persecution. The White City of Tel Aviv is a UNESCO heritage site. Following independence, multiple government projects were commissioned, a grand park built in a brutalist style with heavy emphasis on the use of concrete and acclimatization to the desert climate. Several novel ideas such as the Garden City were implemented. Israeli cities. The Geddes plan of Tel Aviv became renowned internationally for its revolutionary design and adaptation to the local climate. The design of kibbutzim also came to reflect ideology, such as the planning of the circular kibbutz Nahalal by Richard Kaufman. The Israel Museum in Jerusalem is one of Israel's most important cultural institutions, 695, and houses the Dead Sea Scrolls along with an extensive collection of Judaica and European art. The Yad Vashem is the world's central archive of Holocaust-related information. ANU, Museum of the Jewish People on the campus of Tel Aviv University, is an interactive museum devoted to the history of Jewish communities around the world. Israel has the highest number of museums per capita. Several museums are devoted to Islamic culture, including the Rockefeller Museum and the El-A Amaya Institute for Islamic Art, both in Jerusalem. The Rockefeller specializes in archaeological remains from Middle East history. It is also the home of the first hominid fossil skull found in Western Asia, called Galilee man. Israeli cuisine includes local dishes as well as Jewish cuisine brought to the country by immigrants. Particularly since the late 1970s, a fusion cuisine has developed. The cuisine has adopted and continues to adapt elements of the Mizrahi, Sephardi, and Ashkenazi styles of cooking. It incorporates many foods traditionally eaten in the Levantine, Arab, Middle Eastern, and Mediterranean cuisines, such as falafel, hummus, shakshuka, couscous, and za'atar. Schnitzel, pizza, hamburgers, French fries, rice, and salad are common. Roughly half of the Jewish population attests to keeping kosher at home. Kosher restaurants make up around a quarter of the total as of 2015. Together with non-kosher fish, rabbits, and ostriches, pork, often called white meat in Israel, is produced and consumed, though it is forbidden by both Judaism and Islam. The most popular spectator sports in Israel are association football and basketball. The Israeli Premier League is the country's premier football league, and the Israeli Basketball Premier League is the premier basketball league. Maccabi Haifa, Maccabi Tel Aviv, Hapoel Tel Aviv and Beitar Jerusalem are the largest football clubs. Maccabi Tel Aviv, Maccabi Haifa, and Hapoel Tel Aviv have competed in the UEFA Champions League, and Hapoel Tel Aviv reached the UEFA Cup quarter-finals. Israel hosted and won the 1964 AFC Asian Cup. In 1970, the Israel national football team qualified for the FIFA World Cup, the only time it participated in the World Cup. The 1974 Asian Games, held in Tehran, were the last Asian Games in which Israel participated, plagued by Arab countries that refused to compete with Israel. Israel was excluded from the 1978 Asian Games and since then has not competed in Asian sport events. In 1994, UEFA agreed to admit Israel, and its football teams now compete in Europe. Maccabi Tel Aviv BC has won the European Championship in basketball 6 times. Israel has won 9 Olympic medals since its first win in 1992, including a gold medal in windsurfing at the 2004 Summer Olympics. Israel has won over 100 gold medals in the Paralympic Games and is ranked 20th in the all-time medal count. The 1968 Summer Paralympics were hosted by Israel. The Maccabi Games, an Olympic-style event for Jewish and Israeli athletes, was inaugurated in the 1930s and has been held every 4 years since then. Krav Maga, a martial art developed by Jewish ghetto defenders during the struggle against fascism in Europe, is used by the Israeli security forces and police. Chess is a leading sport. There are many Israeli grandmasters, and Israeli chess players have won a number of youth world championships. Israel stages an annual international championship and hosted the World Team Chess Championship in 2005. Israeli literature is primarily poetry and prose written in Hebrew, as part of the renaissance of Hebrew as a spoken language since the mid-19th century, although a small body of literature is published in other languages. By law, 2 copies of all printed matter published in Israel must be deposited in the National Library of Israel. In 2001, the law was amended to include audio and video recordings and other non-print media. 650. In 2016, 89% of the 7,300 books transferred to the library were in Hebrew. In 1966, Shmuel Yosef Agnon shared the Nobel Prize in Literature with German Jewish author Nelly Sachs. Leading poets include Yehuda Amichai, Nathan Alterman, Leah Goldberg, and Rachel Bluestein. Internationally famous contemporary novelists include Amos Ounce, Edgar Keret, and David Grossman.